Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. And for those of you who are watching at a slightly later time through the recording, thank you also for joining us. My name is Dan Peters. I'm a licensed psychologist. I am the co-founder and executive director of Summit Center, where our main office is in Northern California, and we have a satellite office in Southern California. I am also the host of Parent Footprint with Dr. Dan, a podcast. Today's talk is parenting with awareness, purpose, and intention. So here we go. We're starting with a parenting quiz. This is for all of you who are currently parents, and for those of you who I guess it's for parents of all ages, and for any of you who are not primary parents, but also caretakers and mentors and coaches and therapists. This also applies to you with all of your nieces, nephews, students, clients, and everyone that you care about. So here we go. Here's the quiz. Do you feel A, stressed, B, overwhelmed, C, worried about your child right now, or worried about your child's future? And from my experience, we needed an E, which is all the above. Now, there are reasons for this. Parenting is not easy these days. And I think we need to talk about all of it when we think about parenting. We need to ground ourselves in the context of the world we are living in at this time. We have the constant challenge of social media and what social media does. We know there are some positive aspects of social media, and yet we know that particularly for children and teens, there are a plethora of negative impacts with social media that can impact mood, depression, anxiety, bullying, and access to information, and seeing things that maybe they shouldn't be seeing and that should likely be censored. Speaking of that, we have the internet, which is a whole world. And for many of these kids that have smartphones in elementary school, without some serious preventative locks, there is lots of information that they can get. And then, of course, we have gaming, the dopamine, and all of this is dopamine generating information that is designed to have us and our kids seeking more and more and more. For those with older kids and teenagers, we have alcohol and use. Then there's COVID and the impact of COVID, the impact that COVID had on our kids' mental health, their social connection and isolation, their educational advancement or retention or stasis. Then we have the natural environment. We have the effects of global warming. We have an increase in natural disasters, which seems like no matter where you are in the country or the world, there are fires, there are earthquakes, there are tornadoes, there are hurricanes, and there are volcanoes. We have too many shootings to the point that we get used to hearing about them. And we also have too many wars that continue to go on and new ones happening. And then for those of you with older kids, you have the stress perhaps of college applications and all of the myths that go with it about your kid's not going to get into a good school unless you do this, and this, or there's not enough spots at all the good schools. Those are all myths, but those all play on us. And then there is the societal messaging that relates to what's going on in your communities, but also through social media about this perception of how we are supposed to raise kids, this perception of how kids get ahead, this perception of who your kids are supposed to be and who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to look like. And that is a lot of pressure. So if you are stressed, if you are overwhelmed, if you are worried about your kids, I have found that to be a fairly normal place to be. And what I hope from this talk is we can talk about ways to what to focus on to help us ground ourselves in who we are to be the best present parents that we can be based on our own values and try to discern what is noise and what is aligned with who we are, what we want for our families. So here's what the science says. Teaching our children is better than controlling and punishing them. We know that from brain-based science that kids cannot learn when they're scared or angry. The parts of our brain that are activated, the limbic system, that is the emotional brain, that houses the amygdala, which is our fear center. When that is activated, we go into a mini or major fight or flight. So when kids are being yelled at, when kids are being literally talked down to, when kids are in a fear mode, the emotional part of their brain turns up and the frontal lobe, their thinking part of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, turns down to put them in a fight or flight survival mode. So we know this now. So based on this, we also know that we as parents can't teach our kids effectively when we are dysregulated, when we are activated, and when we are emotional. And this is not to say that our kids don't do this to us or that our kids don't act in ways and do things that cause us to have natural human emotional reactions. The message is that if we are in an activated state, the likelihood of being able to teach our child a lesson is very minimal because they will be in an activated state based on our emotion and our response. Kids learn from watching their parents. And you know when you have that child that doesn't hear anything you say, but only hears when you talk about something that you don't want them to hear? This is what kids do. They're always listening to us about the important things. They're tuning us out on the things that they see as not important, but they are always watching and they are always listening to us. And I know that sounds like a high pressure situation. It's just reality. And so again, we need to reflect on ourselves and how we are being in each of these moments, because it's not do as I say, not as I do. We really want to get into conscious, mindful habits of being intentional. And finally, love and connection is foundational to health and well-being. Our love for our children, our connection with our children is foundational to their well-being. Now, here's what I observed. And what I didn't say is that today is really about the information that I'm presenting is a combination of the literature, the parenting literature, the self-development literature, my work as a psychologist over the last 2.5 decades, as well as my own experience as being a parent during that time and being a human being as well. So what I've observed is parents want what's best for their kids. Period. Parents want what's best. And they don't want their kids to experience some of the pain and suffering that they did, or just pain and suffering at all that they can avoid. We use these words like happy and successful. And I can relate to those, even though those are often overused words, is we want our kids to be some type of happy, fulfilled, and some types of successful in life. Now, here's the thing. If we just take those three statements, I could give you many examples where those intentions didn't turn out the way that parents would have liked, but they drove the behavior. One example is the college admissions scandal several years ago. Those parents wanted what was best for their kids. They didn't want their kids to have disappointment, and they wanted their kids to be happy and successful. So they went to great lengths and illegal lengths to get their kids into prestigious schools, which ultimately undermined their kids' abilities in themselves. The kids felt betrayed. Many of them lost their parents to prison and were shamed by what happened because it completely minimized who they were in the world and what they had accomplished on their own. What I've also observed is parents' own childhood always inform their parenting behavior. Always perform their parenting beliefs. Their own childhood always inform their parenting beliefs. Also, parents' childhoods impact parenting behavior. We can't get away from this, right? We either like aspects of how we were parented and carry them forward. We don't like aspects of how we were parented and we try to do the opposite. And for many, we may or may not have liked how certain things went, but we still do them because that's how we were conditioned. Like it still happens, and then we find ourselves doing or sounding like our parent. And the whole point of this is increasing awareness. Not that we're not going to make mistakes, not that we are not going to act based on our conditioning, but we are going to be aware and we're going to be open and we are going to be intentional about how we want to be and how we want to parent our kids. So the question is, what do you want for your children? What are the things that are important to you? Are grades important? Mastering an ability, mastering a sport, mastering a performance, being a creative artist. Are those things important to you? Do you want your child to learn to take risks, be a risk taker, expand? Do you want them to persevere, learn resilience and perseverance? Is something that's important to you that they become independent? Coping with adversity, being successful, whatever that means to you. And as we talked about, being happy, being fulfilled. What is important to you? Tiene un plan. So, Mrs. Tabernakis was my high school Spanish teacher who I adored, and she would say to all of us, and to me in particular, Dan, tiene un plan? And she was always talking to us about our life plan, whether it was based in certain behaviors she was seeing in the present and asking us to think about our future. So I ask all of you, tiene un plan? Do you have a plan? And here's the interesting thing about parenting. Parenting is one of these things we just go into with the assumption that we have the necessary knowledge and skill because we were parented. When most other things in life often have some sort of plan, whether it's a business plan, a sports plan, a performance plan, a building plan. When it comes to parenting, we usually just jump in. And one of the things that we need to think about is what is important to us so we can be intentional about cultivating that in our family, in our relationships, and with our children. So the whole idea of a parent footprint is that we all have footprints, symbolic footprints that were placed on us by our parents, which were placed on them by their parents, and so on. And thus, we will be putting a footprint, have a parent footprint on our kids. And so the idea is for you to imagine these footprints in the sand. And on a day-to-day basis, we are making footprints. The goal is for as much as possible for us to choose the footprint that we're leaving, to be intentional about the footprint that we're leaving, and reduce the amount of unintentional consequences or footprints we leave because of something we're not aware of, because we are triggered, because we are having a bad day, or because we are doing something or saying something that was done or said to us that we didn't like, and we don't want to pass that down to our children and grandchildren. So this is where informed consent comes in. In our field of psychotherapy, we have informed consent, and in other fields as well, which is letting people know what they're getting themselves into. So this informed consent is, I am going to be asking some questions to provoke memories, which may provoke some emotions. They are intended for reflection. You may find that you do have an emotional reaction to some of these questions, and some of them may even unexpectedly provoke some strong emotion. So what I'd like you to just know that, and be ready that if you start to feel intense emotion that you don't really want to feel free to distract yourself. A couple regulation techniques are to put your hand on your chest or on your heart, also to tap your chest or your heart. And some people like to press their hand or tap their hand to regulate. Those are evidence-based ways of us grounding ourselves. Another way is to feel yourself in the seat, in your chair, on your couch, wherever you are, and to really just feel present. Here is the main point, one of the main points of today. This whole idea of parenting, which we're going to be toggling back and forth between parent and child, is you as parent, you, the human, who you are matters. We're in this day and age where many would say we're in a over-parenting part of our culture and history, where so much attention is given to our kids that many say it's actually unhealthy. We give so much attention to our kids with good intention because we're told we need to if we are loving, if we are involved, if we are caring, if we want them to be successful. We need to step in. We need to get them tutoring. We need to get them enrichment classes. We need to get them on these teams, and we need to show them how much we love them all the time. This happens a lot. And what gets lost in this focus on child, is the loss of focus on the parent, the adult that is raising the human, that the children are looking up to see how to be human in this world, how to be an adult in this world. And therefore, it is very common for parents, for us to get lost in this, and times of life for us to lose ourselves. And what I didn't say earlier on that list of lots going on is that when you have a child who is neurodiverse, highly sensitive, special needs, there's even more to reckon with and to deal with on a day-to-day basis on top of that list. And it is very easy, for real reasons, to lose oneself when being in one of these situations. So I want to acknowledge it, have empathy for it, and say we still need to be aware of who we are and how we are showing up in the world. So we're going to take a little step across the bridge into memory lane, because how we were parented and how our early and middle childhood was impacts who we are and what we do as parents. So, a few questions. How were you treated as a child? How were you shown love? Was it physical? Was it emotional? Was it through words? Were you told a lot? Were you told a little? Were you not told at all? Did you have to guess? How did you know you were valued? How did you know you mattered? What happened when you did something wrong? When you made a mistake? What was the response? And how did that response make you feel? When you were expressing your desires, your interests, your passions, your dreams, how were they received? Were they supported? Were they ignored? Were they dismissed? Were you allowed to be yourself, whatever that means? Were you allowed to show your true self at home growing up? I know it gets more complicated when we get to school, but I'm talking about now in home, in your family, with your primary caregivers. And then were you accepted for who you were? If you were academic, were you accepted for that? If you were creative, were you accepted for that? If you were completely into your dance or theater or your sports, were you accepted? If you were highly sensitive and emotional, were you understood and accepted? So I know these are big questions, and these are just for you to start to think about and to think about later as well as we go through this journey today together, because your remembrances and memories and answers to these questions impact who you are as a person and also impact how you interact and think about your child. So, love, as I said, it is foundational. To a child must be shown that they are loved in order to be able to love themselves. And to be able to love someone in a healthy way comes from also us liking and loving ourselves. So it's the cyclical pattern. You're shown love, you can have self-love, and then you can love someone else. So this is key. Now, there are many that believe, I love my child. What else do you want? What else do I need to do? I love them more than anything. Well, love is foundational. It is essential, but it is not enough because people who love their kids still can hurt their kids. Right? People who physically or any type of other abuse often love their kids, but because of what has happened to them or because of some of their regulation challenges or some of their triggers, they have trouble with regulation or just repeating cycles. We know that we parents often intentionally or unintentionally shame or guilt our kids, but we love them. But the shame and the guilt still impacts them. We would like to shame them and guilt them as little as possible. And ideally, we'd like to be aware of when we are doing it. And again, everything I talk about today are universal parenting behaviors, universal human experiences. What we're talking about, again, is being more aware of all of these in any given situation so we can be intentional with how we want to be. Energy and emotions come with us everywhere we go. We like to think that we can hide our emotions and just show our kids what we want to show them. It's not the case. I can tell you from personal and professional experience that especially highly sensitive kids and intuitive kids, they know what's going on. I remember walking into the house after work and just walking in the door, putting down my backpack, and seeing the kids at the island, and one of them looking up to me and saying, "Dad, what's wrong?" And I hadn't even said anything. And actually, I had intentionally tried to put the stresses of the day, get rid of them on my walk home. That's that high intuition. I remember when our oldest was maybe 4 or 5, and I was driving her and her brother to preschool. And I was going through a particularly difficult time. And I was just staring out the window at a stoplight. And she said, "Dad, why is your face like that?" And I looked up at myself in the rearview mirror and I saw a very flat, expressionless, depressed looking face. And I remember thinking, wow, like everything, this, I can't hide this stuff. And that actually interaction was very influential for me in really digging in to what I needed to dig into at that moment in time to get through what I was getting through for my kids. So when you think about our fear, we think about our anger, think about our emotion, think about depression. All of that energy comes into every situation with our kids. Now, sometimes it's intermittent, and other times, depending on where we are in life, it can be quite chronic. This is not in any way to make any of us feel bad for being human, because these are all part of the human condition. This is for us to have an awareness of how we are feeling on a daily basis, and particularly on a more long-term basis. Our kids absorb it. Our kids could worry about us. Our kids can be confused. And we just need to know that this is an interaction. This is an energetic interaction that happens even before we speak or before we have an intense look on our face. So we need to be aware of the energy that we bring into the home and into the interactions that we have with our kids. Acceptance. So there are 3 generations in this image on purpose, because we know that family experiences, trauma, are trans are tr- transmitted through generations. I recently read where trauma is seen in DNA up to 14 generations. So everything is trickle down. Everything is trickle down. I like the book by Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry called "What Happened to You," because they talk about the word that we should be describing when people are acting in ways that either don't make sense or are highly emotional. Often there are traumatic experience or distressful experiences that have created that behavior. And what we often say is, "What is wrong with you?" Because those traumas and that distress is invisible. So everything trickles down. And the question is can we accept where we came from? And if we can't accept where we came from or accept who we are, what do we need to do to get some of that acceptance? The Dalai Lama talks about that one of the primary reasons for human suffering and human distress is not accepting what is. Now, many of us have been in situations that it was not our fault, we were not in control of, but yet these situations have left an imprint on us. So part of this process of being an intentional and purposeful and aware parent is to really explore where we came from, and are we at peace with it? Do these things make sense to us? And if so, are they or are they not having an impact on who we are today and our interactions with our kids? Now, acceptance is not easy. And acceptance can take a long time, and acceptance can involve healing, and it can also involve the need to have a licensed mental health professional to guide you through. I'm presenting this as an idea, as an aspiration, that the more you can have acceptance for where you came from, the more you can have internal harmony, internal peace, and the less likely that some of those things that you're trying not to transmit will not be transmitted because of this acceptance and this awareness. And this brings us to beliefs, as I spoke about at the outset, which is asking yourself, where did your parenting beliefs come from? Like, what are your parenting beliefs? What are your beliefs? Kids should be seen, not heard. Kids are equal members of the family. Kids should come home and do their homework before they play. No one should ever have for the main course. People should do homework in the quiet. Like all of these, people should be involved in several activities. People should only be involved in one activity. Academics is more important than social activities and recreational activities. Now, all of these are just beliefs that have come to you, but how have they come to you? Have you questioned where they come from? Are they beliefs that were based on your own childhood that were very helpful in how you felt you were raised, so you are passing those on? Are they beliefs that you never questioned because it was just the way it was? Are they societal beliefs? Is every problem a nail where a hammer is to be used? Right? So again, we enter this parenting journey often without thinking about what is guiding my behavior, because it's our beliefs that guide our behavior, right? If I think homework is important, I am going to be engaging in behavior and dialogue that reflects that. If I think extracurricular activities and developing a whole self is just as important as academics, I am going to engage in behaviors that reflect that belief. So again, this is about being mindful and intentional and exploring and inquiring and reflecting about what do we think, and are we engaging in ways that are aligned with our ultimate goals. And as you see, as you start to think about where you came from, where your parents came from, who they are, who they were, who you are, we start to make these connections about, oh, that's why my parents did that. This is why I do that. This is why I say that. I didn't like that, but now I understand why they did that. And I don't want to do that. I want it to be different. So this is the connection. And for those of you, like, this can seem a bit overwhelming because, again, there's a lot to think about, and a lot of it can be emotionally charged. It's just so important, because asking these questions and doing this inquiry, it helps you grow. It helps you heal. It helps you understand yourself more, and therefore being able to be more grounded and more intentional about how you move forward in your own life, but also how you guide your children in theirs. So now there's a few more questions to ponder, because again, we're still about you. How engaged do you feel in your own life right now? And we think about this engagement, several facets. There is engagement in activities, there's engagement with perhaps a partner, friends and family, job, hobby, self-care. Um, it's just looking at all of these different areas of our life and how engaged or disconnected we feel. And then it is how, this honest appraisal of like, how do you feel? Gosh, do I feel tired all the time? Do I feel anxious a lot? Do I feel depressed? Do I feel numb? Um, or do I feel at times enthusiastic and totally engaged and excited? And then back to relationship, it's thinking about those relationships. If you have a partner or primary relationship, how is the quality of that relationship? Like, is there time spent on that? Your other relationships, do you find that they're healthy for you? Are they conflictual? Do you feel supported? Are there people in your life that you feel build you up instead of pull you down? Do you have any time for yourself? And if so, what are you doing with it? And are you doing with it what you want to do with it? Do you remember what your hopes and dreams were? And do you want to still think about your hopes and your dreams? What is something that you are longing for? Something that you think about that's in the back of your mind or when you wake up in the middle of the night. And then what action or actions can you take to prioritize? Right? I know these are big questions, but they're important questions because who you are matters to your kids. The way you live your life is a model for your children living theirs. So if all of your time goes to your kids, what are you showing your kids about how to be a parent? If you take some time for yourself to focus on your own health, to focus on your own hobbies, to focus on your own career, what are you showing them about being an adult, about being a parent? That it's possible to have your own life and nurture and care for and guide kids. If you have a partner and no time is spent on the partnership and all time is spent on the kids, what are the kids seeing about the importance of partnership, communication, date night? Like, we don't think about this, especially as much when our kids are young and we're in the thick of it. But particularly as they get older and they're becoming little people and adolescents and young adults, they are seeing, and whether they are consciously processing or not, we are showing them how to be. All of this goes into awareness, an awareness of where we came from, how we were parented, what we liked, what we didn't like, who we are in the world today, what our goals are for our family, for our kids. What do we want from them? What do we want for ourselves? What do we want to show our kids? Understanding that what we bring to every situation, they are not only going to hear and see, but they're going to feel. Now, as I say this again, it can sound overwhelming that every little thing you do is going to impact your kid in a big way. And that is not the case. It's rhythms. It's rhythms. So yes, a traumatic situation can impact a person in a big way, a single traumatic situation. However, these are all the micros. These are all the micro patterns, the micro rhythms. And we can always shift. We can always change. We can always become more aware and alter something. We can alter something by telling our children, hey, this is how we've been doing things, or this is how I've been doing things, or this is how I've been acting, and I'm really don't want to act that way, so I'm going to do this differently now. Apologizing, huge for kids to learn apology. That's another belief that many parents have. If I apologize to my child, that means that I was wrong and they shouldn't see me as being wrong. Child should certainly see you as being wrong, because particularly when we do things that we don't like that we did, if we don't apologize, how do they know that it was about us and maybe not about them? And how do they know that it's okay to make mistakes, to be vulnerable, to apologize to others if we don't model that for them? So this is a poem that I know many of you are aware of, and I want to read it to you because it's very powerful, and I like to keep this in my mind as I go through life as a parent as well. It's called On Children by Khalil Gibran. Your children are not your children. They are sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the make upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he also loves the bow that is stable. There are so many times in life that we feel not only completely connected to our kids and responsible for them, but that it's almost as if they are part of us or merged with us or need to be a certain way because they are a reflection of us. And what this powerful, beautiful poem always reminds me of is our kids are human beings that were brought to us with their own lives, their own passions, their own dreams, their own personality, their own temperament, just like you had and have your own. And it's our job to guide them and nurture them on their journey, not our journey. And so much conflict happens when parents don't feel that their child is representing them in a way they want to be represented, or their child is not following the path that the parent thought that their child would follow, or the path that they were forced to follow by their parents. So the idea that they're separate from us with their own hopes and dreams and life and future, and for us to create that space to then focus on the bow, on us being stable while we launch them in different degrees in different times of life, I really think exemplifies one of the main points of what we're talking about today. Is think about this question: are they yours? Who are they? What are they becoming? And how can you help them become? So, as many of you know, parenting is messy. And don't we like things to be clear, fit in boxes, be black and white? And it just doesn't work that way. And what I have found is the more we try to hold on to right and wrong, good and bad, um, it creates even more stress and strain in oneself as a parent and in the parenting relationship. So the idea of letting go and being able to lean into the messiness and try to be aware of what are the voices from your family or your community, society that is playing on you, and to try to discern and let that go so you can focus on your child and what they need in that moment. So you can be aware of the fears it's bringing up for you, or the anger or the triggering that's happening for you, so you can have some space. Now, a very important guide in my life has taught me the idea of holding the space. And what holding the space means is when our kids are really struggling, it feels, obviously, it's painful to watch, and we often feel very powerless. Sometimes the only thing we can do is be there. And when I say be there, it might even be being in the other room or being in the house. And sometimes all you can do is hold the energetic space and presence and just acknowledge that this is out of your control. Your child is on their life journey, their life path, and what they are going through is part of the larger path and journey that we do not understand in this moment, and that's going to unfold over time. And I will give you an example of when I wasn't doing that with a particular child. And this was a time when this child was having a difficult time and not going to school, missing some school, not doing work. And perfect example of everything we're talking about. I went into this person's room and said, yes, but if you don't go to school and you don't do your work, aren't you worried you're going to get behind even more? And this little person said to me, Dad, given what you do for a living, I would really expect more from you. Of course, I understand all of that. And right there, I just felt it in my chest. What basically all of my worries and fears about the situation came into my parenting moment, which was the most unhelpful thing that I could have said in that moment. But it was because I wasn't separating. I wasn't aware in that moment that acknowledging my worry and fear, which I knew I had, but I wasn't acknowledging that what I was saying, which I was thinking was a good parenting intervention, was actually completely unhelpful. And what I just needed to do, and what I had learned, especially in hindsight, was just to hold that space and that struggle, and that it was a point in time and temporary. So, hard to keep things simple when we're talking about all of these intricacies, but let's try. So, as a parent, try to be aware of your energy and emotional reactions. Feel them. Inquire to yourself about them. Ask yourself why you are feeling this way. Why are you getting triggered? Is this reminding you of something from your childhood? Is this reminding you of something from this situation with this particular person? It's all about awareness. It's not to feel. You're going to feel, and at times very intensely, but being aware of your energy, being aware of whether you want to bring that into the room right there in that interaction or wait. And I can say that in some of the most helpful times when I have been guided by my wife to, especially towards some of those teenage years, is to, hey, maybe you should hold off on having that conversation until you're a little not feeling so strongly. That was the best advice I could have gotten, because some of my most impactful conversations were after I had a day to sit with it and just calm down and not have my child react to my intensity, so they could actually hear and I could be clear about how I was feeling and what I wanted to communicate so we could have a dialogue. When you are intervening in something big or something little, ask yourself what the goal is. And I often think of this as a forest or a tree. The forest is the big picture, and the tree is the detail. So it's trying to discern what's going on here. Like, am I upset because my child needs to get their shoes on so we can get out the door and get to school on time so I can get to work on time? That would be the tree. Or is it more the bigger picture is I'm really worried that my child does not have the life skills to go out in the world or will not have the life skills to go out in the world. So I am worried about that. And I am going to come down on this moment right now because they need to learn this. What would it say about me if my child isn't ready to be out in the world? So it's asking yourself, what is the goal here? And I can remember many times saying to myself, okay, should I focus on getting the shoes on, cleaning up the room, finishing the homework, the tree, the task? Or is it more important to have a relationship moment right here, have a connection? How do I want to handle this one more story, one more story, one more story? It's time for bed, you need to get your sleep, or it's more important that, you know what, for us to have this positive connection and go to sleep not feeling upset, or to walk out the door or out of the car for school feeling good, not having a conflict. Once you've thought this through, of course, in a millisecond, but the whole idea is you don't need to intervene in every second. You can pause. You can say, let me get back to you. Let me say, I need to think on this. I need to take some time for myself right now. Consider what your options are before responding. This is what being aware and intentional and purposeful is. And then try a behavior or an action that fits what your goal is for this situation. Oh, we just got to get this homework done. We just got to get these shoes on. Or no, I actually want to have a moment. I don't care about that other thing. I'm going to push that off. I just want to have a positive moment with my child right now. And then later, did it work? How'd you do? Was it aligned with what you were thinking? Does it fit your value or your goal? Do I need to do it differently next time? Do I need to talk to my child about it? And actually, do I need to apologize? Like, yeah, I didn't handle myself well. I got triggered. I was already a little upset from A, B, and C. And when you did that, it just really set me off. And while I didn't like that you did that or said that, I shouldn't have reacted that way. And I'm sorry. I'm going to work on that. So returning to the question, what do you want for your children? What's important to you as you see them in this world that we're living in right now, as this world that is emerging with all of the new technologies and all of the continued polarities and transitions? What do you want for them? How do you want to be? How do you want them to be? And because you are so important to them and you are just important for you, what do you want for yourself? The clock is intentional. It's never too late. I hear so many adults saying it's too late. It's too late for their goal. It's too late for their dream. It's too late for them having a meaningful relationship. It's too late for them learning to set boundaries with family members. It's never too late. I can tell you story after story after story of adults of all ages who make the changes they wish to make. And we don't have to talk about 100% changes, partial changes. And I will share a personal story about this. When my grandmother, I'm guessing, was in her early 70s, we were at a family wedding, or no, bar or bat mitzvah. It was a bar or bat mitzvah. And I saw her sitting alone there. So I asked her, I must have been about 15 or so, 14, 15. I asked her if she wanted to dance, and she said no, she did not. So I remember thinking, oh, wow, okay. Thought I was doing kind of a kind gesture there, Grandma, to dance with you. Later found out that the reason she said no is because she felt she didn't know how to dance. And again, I think she was in her early to mid 70s, if not older. She, at that time, was motivated to learn how to dance, and she became a semi professional ballroom dancer and was dancing in her 80s with the Arthur Murray Dance Studio. It is never too late. And she was a role model for our entire family, for my parents, my aunt and uncles, my cousins. We still talk about it, and we still make the dance move that she always used to make, and we think about it with fondness. So it is never too late for what you want for yourself. So the final questions here, final questions. Am I satisfied with how I'm living? How do I usually feel? When am I the best version of myself? Because there are clues in when you're the best version of yourself. If you're in nature, if you're with friends, if you are reading a book, if you are exercising, take note and see how you can get more of that and expand that. Am I satisfied with my relationships? Do I have that passion, that interest that I want to pursue? I stopped pursuing it, or I have always wanted to. Are you prioritizing time for yourself? Can you get some help with this from your community, from your partner, from your family, from your friends? I want you to think about one action that you can take. One action, micro steps, micro action that is for you, because that will not only enrich your life, it will help your child. So this is how we parent with purpose and intention, people. We have this awareness about who we are, about where we came from, about what our beliefs are. Are we engaging in behavior that is aligned with our belief? How are we feeling? How is our life going? Do we want to make some changes? Realizing it's okay to prioritize ourselves and our own adult relationships, and that is good for our kids. How are we showing them love? How are we showing them that they are valued? How are we showing them that we like and love who they are, and they have permission to be themselves, even if it's different than who we thought they would be, if it's different than society says they should be. It is messy. It is an adventure. It is a journey. The older I get, the grayer I get, the more I work with people, the more that I parent older and older children, now young adults. I can say that the more that I open up to the wonders of the journey, the self growth, the growth of our children, and try to nurture them in ways that we feel support their growth and make changes where we feel that we didn't do so. Doing it with passion, or excuse me, compassion for yourself. We're all products of where we came from. We're all gonna make mistakes, but we all can increase our awareness and be more purposeful and intentional with the journey. So I will leave you with the idea for you to focus on being the person you want your child to become. There's so much to think about. And if you can try to simplify it by focusing on your own growth and development, seeing who you want your child to be and say, how can I embody that myself? How can I show them that model of a person? And for those of you who know me, know I ask this question a lot. Think about what footprint you want to leave. Thank you for so many of you being with us today. Can feel your energy. For those of you who will be watching this at a later date, who are watching it now at a later date, thank you so much for being interested in this topic, in this information, and wanting to be the best person you can be for yourself and for your children. You can learn more about what we do at Summit Center at www.summitcenter.us. And of course, you can find all the podcast episodes, well over 250, at www.drdanpeters.com or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Thank you all. I wish you all the best.